Okay, and then go live. All right. Sweet. Okay, cool. All right, well, sweet. Thank you guys for joining today. It's 11 a.m. Pacific, West Coast time. It's Thursday. And as we kind of look at the end of the year, there's a question I think Jordan and I get asked quite a bit. So Jordan is head of growth at GrowthHit, our growth marketing agency. And she leads the charge on paid acquisition and running ads. And we talk to so many people that are like, hey, ads, they kind of work for us. We're a little on the fence, but we want this to be our channel. How do we scale this in an ROI positive way? And Jordan has to do so many one-off conversations to either talk people off a ledge or help them really get comfortable with how to approach this. So we thought we should just, do a talk on this, on basically how to scale your ad from as low as $10 a day to $1,000 per day. So we'll get into it. But Jordan, great to see you today.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So it's funny. So Jordan did, I don't know, like an 8-hour class on this that you taught for ClickMinded. Shout out to Tommy. Go check it out. It's a great program, great class.
Really great value.
Yeah, really good. And you work with the Facebook disruption team, Facebook MBA program. At GrowthHit, you oversee all paid for our clients. I say that in that, like, you've seen some things and you have some perspective. So the goal is to give people some nuggets of that. So if they're trying to do it themselves, it can be helpful. But this is where I was thinking we start. You and I did a little conversation yesterday, and you're like, hey, before we talk about scaling an account, let's talk about what to do before you just start throwing money at the Meta and Instagram ad machine. Because by the way, they're very good at taking your money. So let's make sure they take it and they give you some customers in exchange for that. But you kind of hit on 6 things. What are the 6 things we should do before we start making it rain money on Meta and Instagram?
Well, I want to temper your expectations on making it rain. None of these tools are, we're not the Federal Reserve printing cash. That's not what these tools do. But yeah, there's some main things you should definitely prioritize before launching ads. And truthfully, they apply to any channel. So at least for this portion, I think it's really applicable no matter what you're looking to do, whether it's Google, TikTok, Pinterest, or Meta and Instagram, their universe. The first thing I would do is any platform that you intend to launch paid ads on, go ahead and set up the tracking. You don't have to be spending on the platform, but this is going to give you an edge because you'll already have some data in their database that the machine learning can start to learn from. So there's no reason to wait. And on top of that, you always run into weird bumps when you're creating new ad accounts. The verification processes are getting more intense. Sometimes they want to make sure they want you to verify your location and weird things like that. And it's better to get all of the infrastructure set up way before you need it. Because when you're in a rush, you're not going to be very patient and it can be very frustrating to do these things. But more than that, you want to get data into the ecosystem.
Yeah. And for people that know, because if you don't have your conversion event set up and you start sending traffic to your website from Meta, from Instagram, you have to give it a signal to know if it's good traffic or not. And a good signal is, if you're an e-commerce company, did they add something to cart? Did they purchase? So when it fires that, it goes back to the ad manager. It's like, hey, that person is a good potential customer. Let's find more like them. Or lead generation site, the conversion tracking could be to get an email sign up.
Exactly.
Which is, and if you're starting from scratch, so many times we see issues. So that's number one. And then you talked about some other issues that are not, or things to consider that honestly, sometimes clients don't want to hear, but you want to hit on those other ones?
Oh, yes. I think I'm well known for saying things people don't want to hear. And then they still work with us anyway, because we're being honest. But the second thing is I would really focus on making your first sale organically. I met internally with our team, and this is something that they brought up to me, and I totally agree. You need, again, this is about the data. You need some data on the website happening to be able to train the algorithm. you're probably going to be disappointed if you're trying to start from zero and pay your way to that first sale. It's going to be really difficult. And so make it a game, challenge yourself. If you're a founder or a marketer, put on kind of your scrappy mindset and think about, okay, what are the ways I can test on organic to find the right person to really, sell my product, whatever the solution is. And then through that process, you're going to do some preliminary creative testing, basically. So you'll already have some assets identified that might be successful on the paid side.
Yeah. And some advice, like send an email to 50 friends. If you have an email list, hit them up. Is there an influencer, a partner that you could ride the wave of, or get scrappy, get out there, go to conferences, events, just to get those first few customers, to get those signals? Because yes, the ad tools are great for potentially scaling, but doing the scrappy stuff early on, it's necessary.
Yeah, and ads are an amplification tool. So if there's nothing to amplify, 1,000 times 0 is 0. 1,000 times 2 is 2,000. So, I'm being a little ridiculous, but it really pays off, I think, to do the hard work of getting 0 to 1 before you put ad dollars in. But that's my take. Yeah.
Awesome.
Next, I'd really do some business analysis and be honest with yourself. So when we're thinking about how we want to enter ads, really when we're thinking about these low spend levels, if you truly only have $10 a day to spend, we need to be focused. What is the hero product that actually has a high enough margin to make sense to pay to get a customer? Because if your margin is razor thin, you're going to be at a loss. Now, every business is different. So think about your business model, think about your time horizon constraints, think about your cash flow constraints. The situation for someone who is heavily leveraged with VC capital and looking at a 5 to 10 year time horizon, it's a very different set of constraints compared to the businesses we work with who are funding all of their growth dollar for dollar with net profit. So be honest about your situation, your time frame, what luxuries do you have and which ones do you not? But when you're going to run ads, it helps to make sure that you have a product that you can actually afford to have your margin cut, because it's going to, especially at the beginning as things are learning. And if you're not sure which product it might be, you could certainly test a few different ones. But until you start to scale your spend, and ideally until you really plateau and max out that single hero product or category, that AOV that's in that sweet spot, then it might make sense to expand. But really the most profitable brand scaling from my perspective on these platforms are really focused on what they know is getting people in the door.
Yeah. And what I'll do at the end of this section, because with Neat, our own brand, we took this exact advice that Jordan is saying before we launch things. For us, it wasn't like, hey, buy this $40 t-shirt, because guess what? To acquire that customer, it could cost between 25 to 50, 60 bucks. The unit economics don't make sense, right? So we had to not figure out a flagship product, but a flagship bundle to get that average order value over $100. So if we want to run ads, it's like, do the numbers make sense? Because we have some clients that sell maybe supplements that are 30 to 60 bucks or 20 to 40 bucks. And we have to be very aware, hey, this might not be first purchase profitable, or this might be break even. But if the retention's good, it makes sense. But then we have other brands with a higher AOV where it works. But I think it's something that is crucial.
For sure. Anything that's under 30 is going to be very challenging, but not impossible. We work with brands who do it. I would say you need to be patient and not push things too quickly, too fast. If you're playing in that low AOV category, it's possible. But if you can get things above 80, even better.
Nice. Okay, nice. Tell me about market positioning.
Oh yeah, this is maybe some tough love. But really be honest with yourself. Do you have product fit, market fit, or not? Jim, I don't know if you want to give like a TLDR on what product market fit means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, well, the Sean Ellis test, he came up with the phrase growth hacker. He has the 40% rule where like, if the people that like your product or that are using it, if you had to take it away, over 40% would be very angry. It's like, it is a must have, not a nice have. I need to have it. So you have that test. For Facebook ads, it's like, I like this test of like, do you have a clear point of differentiation or a clear aha moment that is like scroll stopping, where you can get people's attention, where they would switch to your product or they'll give you a chance to try? And that's why with a lot of like direct consumer brands, it is leaning on that flagship product that is either showing that magic moment of why it is better than alternatives with like before and afters, or the transformation you get. Do you have something that can do that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you have 0 sales on your web store, I'm sorry, you do not have product market fit. That might be okay, but we need to be honest about what are we expecting out of these tools. Are we using them as learning engines to accelerate traffic to our website, to figure it out faster? Understanding that that's market research dollars. That is not bottom funnel expenditure and should be evaluated as such. So it's not that this tool can't be used at all in that case, but really would like to set expectations with people that it's going to be very difficult if you don't have that first.
Yeah, that's so
40%, like that's a pretty high bar. You know, not every business is meeting that definition of product market fit, but you should be somewhere in between 0 and that.
Absolutely. And then talk about that final component of website, because you can have great ads, great copy, but guess what? They have to leave that ad, that platform, and go somewhere and do a conversion.
Oh, totally. You know, you have to have some place for people to buy from you. Of course, some of these platforms have tools now where people can check out on the actual platform. The percentages I see of how many people going through that checkout flow versus the website vary by brand to brand, but I would still make sure that you have your own channel that you own, you know, that you're able to bring people back through email, etc. You need to build a relationship with people. Does your website look super scammy? Does it look like people are going to be afraid to give you their credit card information? These are some really basic things to address. You know, CRO is a very deep topic, and the way
that's conversion rate optimization.
Oh,
I'm
thank
trying
you.
to
Sorry.
cut back on my acronyms.
You're
Craig
right.
Swanson has inspired me. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Conversion rate optimization is basically a process that we do where we're doing a series of tests on the website to see where and how can we increase the percentage of people who make it to our website actually buy. And you accomplish that through a variety of types of tests, trying to better understand what's getting in the way of people buying. You know, are they afraid they're going to get scammed? In kind of the example we already gave, are they, do they need a little bit of more social proof? They want to know this is actually going to work. Do they feel confident that it's actually going to arrive in a timely manner to actually solve the problem when they want to solve it? This is all getting into conversion rate optimization, but really at a high level, you want to make sure that your site at least feels like a decent representation of your brands, and that it's something that you feel comfortable with the world seeing, because this is how people are going to get to know you. The ads are hooks, and the rest of the journey is probably going to take place on your website.
Yeah, so well said. So as a recap to Jordan's points, and then we'll show a quick example. Well, yes, we want to scale ads. We will talk about that, I promise. But before we start throwing money to the machine, the cash register that is Facebook and Meta and Instagram, technical. Are you set up? Do you have conversion events going so you can have your website talk back to the ads manager in a good way? Are you getting some sales not through paid because it's an accelerant, right? Third, have you done the business analysis? What is the product that you need to put in front of people, or the service that either, if it's e-commerce, it's good because it's a decent average order value. So you could be first purchase profitable, or maybe it's, if you have a service-based business, it's that tripwire offer that is something you could get through paid. Investing in creative, we'll hit on that in a second. Market positioning. Do you have positioning that will be able to compete in the scrolling world that is social, where people will stop and be like, you have my attention? And then finally, website. Is your website built to convert on mobile for paid traffic? So what I'm showing right here is neat. This is the company we acquired last year. And what I'm showing on the left is the initial website. And then on the right is what we made. So with the initial website, we did not out of the gate start running traffic to it. We're like, we got to fix this. And just a couple call outs on what we did. First, the positioning. The headline says nothing but need. What does that even mean, right? If I have 15 seconds from someone that's coming from an ad, I need them to know right away what is that point of differentiation. So look what we did. We say, unlike regular shirts, ours hide sweat, no pit stains, no back sweat. So right away, you should know why we are a special snowflake and why we're different. And then we have this video of the very handsome Tyler popping a water balloon in his shirt so you can see the impact of like, wow, this is truly a sweat proof if a water balloon doesn't go through it, and then make the switch. So that's one if we're landing them there. But the other point that Jordan made that's so crucial, we aren't funneling people to buy a shirt for 38 bucks. That does not work for our business model. We're funneling people to buy a starter pack, to buy the Urban Survival Sweat Set. And notice how this average order value is $99. This works so much better for our business model. And so we've got a little bit of urgency here. We've got social proof. It's not a cheap shirt, so we're speaking to quality with the technical images here. But once we did that, oh, and by the way, some things we did at the cart level, as this pops out, we have incentives, right? Free shipping at this threshold, free shirt at this threshold. The result was conversion rate. We got it to a pretty healthy number, over 3%. What I care about, what Jordan and I care about, is getting that average order value close to 3 digits. And now it's game on, and we are ready to run ads. But
just because it's so much easier, I wouldn't say it's impossible below that, but you're gonna have a much easier time.
Exactly. And there could be a world you're like, hey, I'm down to break even on that first purchase because my repeat purchase rate is so good, or my email marketing campaign, my flows, my first purchase flow is black belt. You just make sure it works with the business model.
Exactly. And for people who are super scrappy, maybe get some $5 gift cards and ask a few people, hey, look at my website. Do you know what I do?
Yeah.
Keep it super simple. Because if people are going to it and they don't know what you do, that's a problem that needs to be addressed before you ever pay for traffic to go to the website, because they won't know what you do either.
Absolutely. And one thing before we get into now, let's scale. One thing that sometimes Jordan and I will say to clients, like before they work with us, we're like, hey, do you have creative? Like, do you have statics? Do you have GIFs? Do you have videos? Do you have user-generated content? It's like, before you even work with us, like overinvest in that or invest in us to do that, because it is the creative game that we're about to be playing. So, all right, let's talk about launching. It's like, okay, George, Jim, got it. I did those 6 things. I've got my shekels, my dollars I want to push into the ad machine. What do I do? Where do I start? Do I start with $10 a day, $100 a day? Jordan, hold my hand. How do we get this going? How do I set up the account? A million questions.
Well, when you invited me to do this particular webinar, I really took it upon myself to think about that $10 a day as a challenge and what would I actually do. As an agency, most of the people coming to us are going to start higher, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to pay someone a retainer, because you're going to have to make way more revenue to cover the retainer. But if you're truly trying to do this yourself and you are not yet in that stage of maturity where it makes sense, $10 a day can work, but you need to be realistic. It might take a long time to really start to get a groove and see volume that you're happy with. But if we are starting there, the number one thing I would say is don't be greedy, be profitable. Be very disciplined about the moves you're making and the increases. We typically don't like to make any budget increases above 20% at any given time, because it will restart the learnings. When you're at this lower stage, I think you can break that rule a little bit. If you've been spending $10 for 10 days and you're getting purchases, you're getting enough volume, you could double it. But again, it might take a while, because what we're talking about is it's the giga problem, the garbage in, garbage out, which is kind of the dramatic way data scientists talk about these machine learning tools, these AI tools, the quality of the data, and that includes the volume of the data into these systems, is going to determine the quality of the outputs you get. So when it comes to meta ads, the amount of clicks, the amount of add to carts, the amount of purchases on your website, that's going to determine how quickly and how many other people the algorithm can find who are going to also buy. So when we're starting at these lower budgets, it requires patience, but it can totally work.
Yeah. And another thing that Jordan and I kind of spoke about is honestly, you need to get enough learnings. And I think a lot of times people don't value time because we're almost like, don't start with $10 a day, start with $100 per day. That's $3,000 in a month. Where in 90 days, we're going to be able to get a nice, decent sample size to start to get signals on what's working and what's not working, right?
Exactly.
So Jordan, you're saying, okay, with whatever you're starting with, factor in time. How long it's going to take to get those learnings, knowing that your cost per purchase or event is going to start high and then it comes down. So really factoring in that time component. Can you give people advice like, okay, let me get my budget in. You're managing my expectations. I'm going to give this 90 days. Talk about like from a technical standpoint, like how do I start with this first campaign if it's even at $100 per day, and speak to people in a way where everybody can understand?
Okay, I will do my best, and let me know if I'm not understandable. So when we think about executing in the platform, we're going to try to keep it as consolidated as possible. And when I say consolidation, I just mean as few campaigns and as few ad sets as possible. Again, this is back to that fundamental principle of data in, data out. So you want your data set to be as large as possible. If you only are spending $10 a day and then you want 2 campaigns with $5 each, well, both of those campaigns now have half the amount of data they had before. And that's not to mention the attribution nightmare of people bouncing between the campaigns. That's a whole different subject. But you want to keep things as focused as possible. So this is the pre-work we talked about. Have you identified your most viable hero products? Are you being somewhat focused? And try not to mix like really low AOV products with really high AOV products in the same campaign. You're trying to stay focused on what is going to be the most viable to scale. When we talk about the optimization events, so when you create ad campaigns on most platforms, I can't think of one that doesn't do it this way, but you typically at the ad set level, tell Meta the exact events that you want to see as the outcome of your campaign. So if your goal is revenue or your goal is purchases, you're going to select that specific pixel event and say, please get me the most purchases within my budget. We really don't like to try to hack our way through the algorithms the way that people used to. What I mean by that is people used to season the pixel, and some people might still do this. I don't agree with this tactic. What seasoning the pixel means is you start with like a traffic optimization and you wait some time. Then you move to a add to cart optimization. Then you move and graduate to a purchase optimization. The algorithm is really good at what it does. So on Meta, you just should start with that purchase optimization. We deviate from this sometimes in our work because of the unrealistic expectations, candidly, that people can have. But if you are going into it with realistic expectations and you can modify your budget based off of the time horizon you are working with, start with that purchase optimization if that's your goal. If your goal is a lead, start with a lead. And as much as possible, we'll always use the standard events in the Meta system. That might be something someone needs to go Google or find documentation on. It's a little more technical. But always use the standard events, because the standard events are things that Meta has massive amounts of data around. They know what purchase behavior looks like on all of these websites. They don't know what your own little individual unique snowflake event that you created and named something. They don't have a bigger data set to map that back to. So from a technical perspective, identify your actual North Star and pick the conversion optimization events that is closest, if not the North Star itself. I'm going to pause there, and then we can talk maybe about creative.
Okay, got it. Create that the end goal conversion. It could be a purchase, it could be a lead. And because maybe we're starting with a limited budget, if you create separate campaigns, you're spreading out the learning. So don't do that. Have one main campaign. Okay, now my question is, I got my campaign. I got my main conversion event I want to go after. How much creative and copy do I need to run a test where the machine learning can start to learn and hopefully optimize?
Yeah, at this low scale, I would probably do 5 ads, and that means 5 visuals. I'd try to have a mixture of video and some static. Most of the accounts that scale with the most ease have a mix for a variety of reasons, and you just don't want to limit yourself. Video is a lot more engaging. So, if you have some videography about you talking about the product or things like that go a really long way. I know founders are really hesitant sometimes to get scrappy and make those videos, but the longer you put that off, the more you're hurting yourself. It doesn't have to be amazing. Just get something out, have your niece do it. Like, just try something to give some variety to the algorithm. So have a mixture of video and static images. We could have a whole 8-hour class on creative, so I won't go too deeply.
We probably should, actually. That should be a good talk. Yeah.
And then for each of those visuals, I would have probably up to 2 primary texts. So primary text is when you're on Facebook, there's like that paragraph that's above the ad. That's what Facebook calls the primary text. On Instagram, it actually shows up below the visual of the ad. So it kind of looks like the caption. If you were to organically post and you add some commentary to a selfie you took, that's sort of what the primary text is in the ad unit. So I would have up to 2 of those. And yes, so Jim has an example here. The part at the top, that's the primary text. And then what the arrow is pointing to at the bottom, that's the headline. I would have 2 headlines for each of these visuals. When you have higher spend or you're doing more, I think you can test more variables and there's different methodologies you could do. But if you're truly spending $10 a day, I would just kind of stick with this 5 visuals with 2 pieces of text for each of them. Meta is kind of shifted the way that the ads get set up. But if you're making like a typical ad unit, you can add multiple headlines and multiple primary texts within a single ad. You don't need to make 30 ads to have that, if that makes sense. So really, you're going to wind up with 5 ad units, depending on the campaign. There's some nuances here, but to keep it simple, you're going to have basically 5 ads with a little bit of variety of creative.
Nice. And what we'll do here in a sec is we'll even show you with Neat the first ads we launched, what worked and what didn't work. But even before we do that, Jordan, people hear things about like account structure and formats and dynamic creative tests and let them test against each other. What advice can you give? They've got the campaign, they've got the conversion event, they're doing maybe one ad set with the 5 creatives and the different copy. Anything else they should know from a structure standpoint so they test against each other?
Keep it simple. The hill I will probably die on forever unless things dramatically change is do not have a test campaign. This might be different at an enterprise level of spend, potentially. Like, I could be persuaded to do a lot of different things based on, you know what I mean? I'm open-minded. So if someone wants to show me data where something's working, amazing. But when we're at these stages of maturity and even spending, I think 10K a day, there's some fundamental issues with test campaigns that are difficult for me to see how they are not problematic.
What does a test campaign mean?
Yes, so some people, and this is one of the more, I think, controversial points of discussion, on Twitter, on X, etc., between media buyers. But the concept of a test campaign is you have a campaign where you are launching a bunch of creative and a purchase optimized environment or a lead optimized environment for your end goal. And you're using that to decide which ones are the best and the worst. And then you take the winners and you move them to a scaling campaign. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of extra work, and especially at these lower levels of spend, the problem is it's not replicable. When you relaunch that ad in that new environment, there's a few reasons it's not replicable, but a big one is, well, now it's going against your top performers, so it's a totally different environment. And it's really about finding a portfolio of ads that work together. sometimes you can pause the bottom performer. And if you're paying attention to the net efficiency, it can go down, because what you're not seeing is that that was a crucial part in the buyer journey. It just wasn't getting the main credit. So that's very nuanced, but keep it simple. Like, just keep one ad set, one campaign if you're just starting with your 5 ads, and let it run for 2 weeks and don't touch it, really. I think it's a lot.
I think that's key, is like, because people run ads and then within 24 hours, like, how's it doing? Manage my expectations, where it's like, okay, I set these up, I let it cook, I'm spending $100 per day, so that's $1,400 in 14 days. I'm gonna let you go down 2 paths. Let's say in one scenario, it's 14 days and it's crickets, nothing works. And then there's another scenario, it's 14 days and you're like, we have some winners. And our ROAS goal was 2.5 and we're 2.6. Hey, this is looking pretty good. What do we do next? And
how much are we spending?
We're spending $100 per day.
Okay, it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If we're spending $100 and it's been 2 weeks, we can make pivots in the creative for sure.
Wait, sorry, which scenario? Is this the bad scenario or good scenario?
Either. Okay. I think that's enough data volume to know what's sort of working and what's not. I don't think you're in the danger zone there. So what I would be doing is I would be pausing out things that didn't get conversions and launching new ads.
And how do I do that? Do I do that as a new batch of an ad set that's competing against the initial one?
Ad set.
Same ad set, I'm adding ads.
In the type of approach we're talking about now, there are, I don't want to get too into the weeds. There are reasons you could do other ad sets if you're doing like dynamic creative ad sets, but those are being phased out. So that's why I'm not walking us through that methodology today, because newer accounts are not getting access to that. And older accounts, some of them still do and some of them don't. So that used to be a main way that we really liked to test creative, but we're having to modify our approach. So in the interest of giving people really actionable advice right now, I would just focus on the one ad set. I would see, okay, did any of these not get any conversions? After 2 weeks, you know, the algorithm didn't find a hit.
Yeah. So then it's like, okay, update, let's go back to the creative brainstorm meeting. But in that positive scenario where it's working, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to scale to $1,000 a day.
Sure.
How do I do that?
So you still do the creative iteration cycle. And, when we say iterations, like you should really focus on adding things that are substantially different. Don't focus on things that are micro tweaks, but this is a different webinar. But so like you still want to cycle in some new creative, because that's going to be the biggest lever for
feed the beast. Feed the beast. Yeah.
But don't go crazy at this level of scale. Like if you launch 100 ads and you're spending $10 a day, it will not help you.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like a data volume game. It needs to be able to make decisions. It's like, if somebody came to you with a stack of 100 books and then asked you to answer a question, like, or a business problem using all that data, it's like, you don't have the processing power to make a better decision. Like it would be better if you just had fewer inputs. But anyway, so there's the creative cycling. And then, if you like where the CPA is, make those gradual increases. So at the high end, I prefer to increase things 3 times a week on the maximum. You could do more, but every time you make a budget increase, keep it between 10 to 20%. If you're really pleased with the cost per lead or cost per purchase that you are achieving, you can do it 20%. These are all ranges. So the bigger the change we make on the platform, the more likely it is to introduce volatility. And volatility means seeing big swings in performance. So on the extreme end, if we double our budget, buckle up, because your cost per purchase might triple. And eventually it will normalize typically, but it's going to feel very scary for a lot of founders and people DIYing this. So if you are a little more conservative, just stick with those 10 to 20% increases a few times a week. And that will quickly start to compound. Obviously, getting from that $10 to the $100 can be slow. But once you hit 100, truly, if you are disciplined and consistent, the amount of growth you can achieve throughout a year is incredible. And it's going to save you so much heartache and stress compared to the people who are meddling in the account all the time. They see something good, they get greedy, they 3x the spend, then they freak out, then they pull it back down.
Yeah.
This happens
Oh
all
yeah.
the time.
I can name a few clients right now where it's like, they're like, they just straight up told us, I'm like, this isn't going to go well. So for people listening, if it starts to go well, 10 to 20% increases, max 3 times per week.
That's what I'm comfortable. If it were me and if I
sure.
had the luxury of time, you could do it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a spectrum of stability, risk reward, like everything in business.
Totally. And some other call outs is like it's not just like find this one ad that is going to be the banger, but it's like creating the machine, the content machine that allows you to kind of test and learn. And what I'll show real quick is like I'll show two things. I'll show with Neat the ads we launched with, and then I'm gonna to kind of highlight Jordan's point on feeding the beast, how we do it. So here's like literally experiment 1. And these are ads. Let's see if, we even called these ugly ads. These right here, like breaking news, a PhD invents first sweat-proof shirt. And then we have the comparison one over here. And then I'll go to these other ads that we had. Let's see if I can change screens. Hold on one second. It's trying to play a bazillion videos. Okay. Then and notice how these are very different. Then we did UGC, user generated content, on top of it. And we found some of those a little bit in like the older demo. And sorry, it's playing audio, so I'm going to pause these real quick. And this guy was actually amazing. Great radio voice. And notice how he isn't some like Abercrombie and Fitch model. That's a very old reference, but people get what I'm saying.
We get it.
And then and then we did this one. Unfortunately, this is me doing content. It's kind of the same. It's the water balloon test. And look at this headline. It's very BuzzFeedy. Point of view, he popped a water balloon in his shirt. Look what happened next. And then we had one that was
I want to pause.
Yeah.
I love that this is a view, Jim, because you really don't like to make content, but you did it anyway, and it worked. And I just want to really emphasize that for the people who are trying to grow their own business. Your fear is probably getting in your way. And, if you believe enough in the product and the business and the service that you've created, like, what is the risk of some embarrassment or cringing in your newsfeed? Like, you're just keeping yourself from opportunities that could be something that really helps catapult your business.
Yeah, it's very true. Angela and Jordan were like, Jim, just do this, stop being a baby. And I did it. And the irony is it is the top performing ad. I'm an influencer, I hate to say it. No, but we're like, you just never know what's going to work. And then we tested these other ones. This is one, it's a little broy, did not perform at all. But here's the big call out. Like, we then start to get learnings. And we're like, hey, here's what worked, what didn't work. Here's the headlines that worked, the text. And then we have the top 4 ads. And then Jordan and team are like, oh, let's see what scales. And it was my ad and this ad that really scaled. And that's where we got excited. We're like, okay, wow, we're, 80% of these flop, 20% of them are working, and a couple of these are scaling. And then to Jordan's point on feeding the beast, we start to take learnings. And so based on what Jordan and her team recommend, we're like, okay, here's content that we're feeding, every week to 2 weeks, depending on spend level. Like, we saw that comparisons had signals that it worked. So one test was, okay, comparison of flat lay of model without face, model with face. And by the way, we had different pieces of copy. And of course, the copy I hated worked. Why your t-shirt suck, but it worked. As we go to the next one, we saw that this format side by side worked, and we test trigger words like no, stop, say goodbye. And then as we go to this one, this is a video that we just loved that actually didn't work. And I was mad. I was like, this has to work. This is a great video. And then we tried to editorialize it, and we put copy on top of it. And then it started to show signals that it worked. Because it's okay to like go back to things to just tweak them a little bit rather than always have to start from scratch. And then this is the kind of final one. But the main goal, the main like point that I'm trying to drive home here is think outside the box. Something Jordan said is have a spectrum of like static images and then user generated content, professionally done stuff, and just start to like put it out there to see what works and what doesn't work. Because if you can build this content muscle, good things will follow. But it has to go back to that initial infrastructure that Jordan hit on before you do all this.
Yeah. And I think we'll do another class probably on the different ways to think about creative diversity. I think that's too much information for today. But to keep it short, think about the stages in the buyer journey. You know, are you serving content that caters to different phases, different mindsets of the buyer? Are you catering to different personas? Are you catering to different, like the visual variety is just a piece of it, but I think that's the easiest and hardest thing to start with. So before you even get more, none of the marketing theory is truly that complicated. Like, I really don't think it is, but you know, to keep it simple, just look at your stuff. Do we see, is there diversity, or does everything look the same? And if everything looks the same, mix it up, you know, bring somebody in, change some colors. You know, it may not be your brand's guidelines to a T, but the more you're able to just try different stuff, the more likely it is that you're going to find something that can outperform what you've already done.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Like what Jordan's saying is like, we kind of focus on a core use case, like the water balloon test. Then we start to get signals, hey, your extra larges are selling out. So look at this. This is an ad with someone in an extra large, right? We're then testing going after the golfer. We're then testing going after the female who might be buying for their husband or partner, right? And so, that's a really good call out on testing different personas with creative.
Mm-hmm. But you got to get the basics, because if everything looks the same, it won't matter. If you have no videography, I'm sorry, you need to get videography. You will plateau. You will get frustrated. And everything we said, it's like there's nothing that is truly a must unless you want to have the best results possible. You know what I mean? It's like you can still succeed and not do everything we said, but these are the things that are going to give you a head start and make it easier, because truthfully, running ads on Meta should be easy. It's a good product. It's a good platform. If you have the business model that fits with it, if you have the creative, if you have the patience, you know, there's a lot of companies that can win by using this platform.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Jordan, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have to do a follow-up just on creative strategy and positioning and copy and different ways to test it, and some scrappy tools that you could use. But you guys, we're here to help. We really just want to see people like grow their companies, grow their brands, thrive within their position. If you ever need anything, just hit me up. I'm Jim at GrowthHit.com. 2 H's. I probably should just done 1 H. But yeah, we'll be putting out more stuff around ad content, and hopefully this is helpful. But please, if you ever need help with anything, hit us up. We're down to give some advice. But Jordan, thanks for the time. I know you have an upcoming call, so we ended on time so you can prepare. So I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim.
All right, cool. See you, Jordan.